I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I know.
Why is romance so weird in movies? Like, why is every love story in cinema presented as being a relentless chase filled with lies, manipulation and cheating? And more to the point, how has that affected dating culture, and why is it so widely received as positive by the critics and viewers? So I'm sure we're all familiar with the cliche romance tales that are all told time and time again in movies. Attractive man sees attractive woman. Attractive woman doesn't like attractive man, even though she secretly does. Man stalks and harasses woman, but is attractive, so it's seen as flirting. Woman leaves current partner for attractive stalker man, and everyone lives happy ever after. Except from the countless people they cheated on during the movie. What I want to know is why. Why are these movies, with terrible people doing terrible things to others, seen as desirable and enjoyed by so many people? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I think I've unlocked the secret to the female mind. Stick with me. It's important to understand that men and women look for very different things in romantic relationships. That's why so many times, from an outsider's perspective, the relationship dynamic doesn't seem to make any sense. Like, why is that supermodel looking girl going out with that ugly dude who looks like he lives in the jungle? Or why is that super well off guy going out with that random girl who never speaks to him, no one knows? He could do way better. For those in the relationship and those closest to it, the relationship they have makes perfect sense, as their perspectives, attitudes and beliefs have a perfect, healthy balance, and they have similar enough interests and personality types where they're compatible with one another. Now, I'm not here to break down the ideals and dynamics of a perfect relationship. There are far many more qualified people that can tell you that, and also I'm a single lonely virgin. What I want to illustrate is why the movies we watch are the way they are, and how this relates to real world relationships. Hollywood has always tried to appeal to the masses, as it makes their content far more palatable to the vast majority of people. So when it comes to romance, Hollywood attempts to appeal to our most personal romantic desires. And when you watch these movies, it may not always be apparent as to how these psychopaths are anyone's fantasy. But I think beneath the surface, most of these character tropes are deep rooted in the psychology of people when it comes to romance. For a start, although the way it manifests on screen can often be disturbing, let's say, the obsession that the characters have with one another reflects the viewer's desire to be desired. Everyone wants to be loved to the ends of the earth, and these movies take that concept and stretch it to an extremely exaggerated and almost ridiculous length. Now, it's no secret that the vast majority of romance movies are for women. Most of the viewers are women, the stereotypes are made for the female mind. And this is because women tend to be more emotionally invested in stories. You know, they really try and resonate with the characters and see how they're feeling, they're more empathetic. So naturally women tend to gravitate to stories they share similar emotions with. Men tend to care less about characters in the movies, and they're more interested in, spectacle and story. The spectacle being stuff like explosions and punching and tits. And because the audience for these movies are mostly women, it makes sense that these films would be made predominantly for women and their romantic desires. Now, as a man, I am building this understanding based on what women have said appeals to them when it comes to romance and rom-com movies. And that could all be fake. Women could have some different agenda. They probably do have different things that they don't speak about publicly, because everyone has things that they look for that they don't want to say just because it may make them look bad, or they may be worried about how it's perceived. But for the sake of argument, let's just say that this is what's true. Now, first things first, the people in the films are always extremely attractive. This point is highly influential in both men and women watching these movies, because both main characters tend to be extremely attractive. Now, it's not just women that this influences, it's the men as well, probably even more so than the women, but they both feel this, and I don't really want to delve too much into it, so we'll just leave it there. But I just thought I'd mention it. The sad part about all of this is that if the exact same actions were committed by an ugly person in the movie, then the story and themes of the films would be entirely different and will relate to more of a crime thriller than a romance story. Now, the main thing that I think really gets women into these movies is the sheer lengths that the men in these stories would go to get their woman, in order to make the woman in the stories fall in love with them. Obviously, in the real world, there is a limit to how far any reasonable person is willing to go to impress and seduce a romantic partner. But in fiction, these limits don't exist. The only limits that exist are the ones set by the writers. And these movies act as sort of hyperbole for what a man who really loves you should be willing to do. No matter where you are, physically, mentally, or emotionally, a man that loves you will do anything to make sure that his love is reciprocated. I think this notion has carried over from romance genre into other genres. Shows like You take this same philosophy and they apply it to more, violent actions, and it becomes a more sort of psychological thriller rather than actions that appear to be fairly innocuous in a rom-com. Now, obviously, these fictional parameters can be an issue later on. We'll get on to that. But first, let's talk about the men. Aside from the obvious fact that men want an attractive girlfriend like they see in the movies, the appeal from men is largely the same as it is with women, but with a few key differences. The main one being that these movies show that a man can in fact get the girl he wants, providing he's willing to do whatever he can to reach it. It's reassuring for a man to learn that the great lengths he is going to for a woman is appreciated and that nothing is unattainable if he commits enough time and effort to it. I think it's refreshing for a man to see all that his good work to go to achieving something he really wants can actually work out, which is just a great philosophy to have in general. Also, a lot of these male characters tend to be sort of awkward and shy and not really like the centre of attention, like the jock character in these movies usually is. And I think the story of the nerd or the not so confident guy getting the girl is something that a lot of men relate to as well, because a lot of men don't see themselves as these quote-unquote alpha males, but they see themselves more as maybe not betas, but definitely quieter and more reserved. So to see the underdog in the story win is something that I think again adds to the male desire to watch these films. Of course, the main male desire for men to watch this film is to watch it with a woman in the hopes of inciting a romantic relationship, when itself is also sort of like a meta take on romance movies as a whole and how they're being used to induce romance between other people deliberately. It's a weird thing how these contrived stories have themselves become contrived tools to start romance, and it's weird. There are many issues that arise from these romance cliches and how they translate to the real world. Now, for the obvious one, these movies glorify and praise terrible people doing terrible things. But I think most people understand that the characters in these movies are bad people doing bad things. But there are still a lot of people who tend to take this on board. But the real issue is the unhealthy standards and unrealistic expectations set by films like this. Obviously, it is unfair for men and women to believe that these sorts of attitudes are effective when it comes to finding a romantic partner. Sure, you can pursue someone romantically, but maybe not literally through the woods at night, in the dark, whilst on all fours and screaming. For starters, these films always force people with no real connection together in very contrived ways. And the truth is, in the real world, these relationships very rarely start, and when they do start, are even less likely to work out long term. If there's no common ground, then no matter how much you like how the person looks, I just don't think it's going to go the distance. Also, real people don't look or speak like this. Obviously, we've talked about the appearance, but the way that characters communicate with each other in these stories is just so fake. The way these characters immediately hit it off and are so smooth and confidence that you never see from the character before, and that goes completely comes completely out of left field. These stories portray love as if it's just something that falls out of the sky into your lap, and sure, that can happen in some cases, but in reality it takes a very long time and lots of communication to form this special bond that the couple has. And I think that that's something that, again, people need to remind themselves of when watching these films. These relationships don't happen. Because in the movie, you're just seeing this romance blossom over one summer, but it takes place in 2 hours. And you think that that's how quick love should be. And especially in nowadays where everyone's attention span is so short, you've really got to work to make romance work. It's almost like it's a job. It's like not a hassle because you want to do it, but it's something that requires effort. And I think that's something that these movies missed. Let me know your thoughts on the video down below. Let me know your thoughts on romance movies in general. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.